Newstalk ZB.
Commentary box after 8, of course, being a Monday, but at 23 minutes away from 8, the Prime Minister is with us. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike.
Isn't it great
you got a fan in Freddie?
It's great.
Just for the listeners, Mike's invited an 11-year-old in who's a big fan of Hosking to shadow him for the day. So we're signing Freddie up, I think, to ZB in the next 10 years or so.
And unfortunately, what the Prime Minister has done is try to convince Freddie that I'm some sort of weirdo. And anyway, it wasn't as bad, I must tell you. We put on, what was the breakfast we put on for Freddie and his mum?
Listeners, I come into this show, I'm never even offered a glass of water. I come in this morning and there's very healthy fruit and very posh yogurts and all sorts of things for Freddie. But
that's how we roll. The boss wanted McDonald's and McFlurries.
and you went healthy on them.
We had to tell him to pull his head in. Right, let's deal with some business. First of all, the fees free. Does this irk you that it's out?
No, not really. Look, it was going to be a pre-budget announcement. The backstory here is that, we've moved New Zealand First to quite a good place. I mean, it was part of the coalition agreement to move it to, last year fees free. And actually, they've, all credit to them, they've actually seen that it's a huge monumental policy failure and a huge waste of taxpayer money. And whether it was under Labour as a first year fees free or under the coalition as a last year fees free, the bottom line is it hasn't delivered on any of its objectives, hasn't driven more kids into tertiary education, hasn't put kids from poorer backgrounds into education, and certainly hasn't supported lifelong learning. So, to be honest, Mike, we're not in the business of untargeted subsidies. We already underwrite 80% of university education, one of the highest in the world, and so let's knock it on the head and do something else.
Can you take some criticism that as much as you want to criticise year one, next year's on me, famously from Jacinda Ardern, you didn't fix it in the sense you put it at the back end, which at least made more sense in year one, but still didn't work.
Yeah, still didn't work. And I think, that it was important to New Zealand First. They actually sort of believed in the policy. And as I said, some credit to them, because at the end of the day, they saw what we could see and we talked about it for some time. And I think we've got to a good place.
Okay. Where does the money go then?
Some of it will go into trades training. Actually, we're finding we're getting hugely oversubscribed in high school on what's called the trades academies. And we think we can probably double the number of places that are available there. And the second thing is something called the Youth Guarantee, which is actually for young kids with actually low or poor qualification, low qualifications to get into vocational pathways at polytechs.
But what's the difference of giving not that I'm against this, but what's the point of giving a trainee mechanic an apprenticeship with government money versus giving an engineer or a doctor the same money at university? Yeah,
the Youth Guarantee is actually for kids that actually haven't got great qualifications, have either got no qualifications or very poor qualifications coming out of high school. But the trades side of it is a part of the program that we know is actually we would love to get more money into if we could. And it's actually quite interesting, if you get out and see some of the high schools, these kids are signed up at the beginning of the year. They might actually be building 2 or 3 state houses for the government, but they also get very connected to the building industry within their own local town as well. So a lot of those kids are then, the feedstock for apprenticeships and local regional.
Is all the money being used without giving budget secrets away? Yeah, do you tell whatever you're taking out of university you're putting into trades dollar for dollar?
We'll reveal all of that in the budget.
Reveal means you're saving some. So you're taking 100 out and you'll save some.
We'll be saving some money.
Okay, fair enough too. Retirement.
Yep.
What's your assessment of the political risk? Given Key, for example, wouldn't want to touch it.
Yeah.
What's your assessment of the political risk of telling people, vote for me because I'm going to make it harder for you to retire and get money?
Yeah, well, look, I think the bigger question is what's the problem we're trying to solve? And when you look at it, we've gone from 7 workers to 1 retiree. I think very shortly, in the next few years, I think we're at 4 to 1 today. We'll be at 2 to 1 very quickly. Very big proportion of government spending going forward with an ageing population. I think it gets up to we're at sort of 18% now. I think it gets up to 25% pretty quickly. And particularly in the next few years, it really starts to accelerate on us. So the problem is the system is essentially going to become unworkable and unaffordable. And it just means that that's money we don't put into health and education, or we end up loading up our kids with a hell of a lot of debt. So if you take a step back, you've actually got to say 3 things. One is, I think one of the things we're really quite hot on, and you've seen the National Party policy from November last year. We've started some of it in government, but we've got to step up the contributions to match Australia 12% by 2032. The second thing, I think there is a genuine question about age. If our peer countries like Canada, the UK and Australia have found a way through it, surely we can do it in a very sensible, graduated, lots of signalling of time to deal with it. But that is, people are living 4 years longer than they were in 2005 now. So, and I think the other bit was I've seen conversations around means testing. I think you've got to be quite careful with that because people need certainty going forward, and you could see future governments changing thresholds.
So in other words, it's still an entitlement. You either get it or you don't.
Yeah, I think so, because otherwise you get rearranging of affairs and maybe.
Can you say it safely this election, given that New Zealand First don't want to bar it, and therefore it's not a bottom line? I take it's not a bottom line for you, is it?
Well, I mean, we'd have to get into a negotiation on it. We couldn't get it across the line in the last coalition because we've gone to the
you can campaign on this safely, knowing it's never going to see the light of day.
Well, but I think it's actually kind of important. I mean, the way either we're going to talk about issues out it's like driving the car, looking at the front windscreen and seeing some bumps along the way. We've got to either deal with that and consciously choose to deal with it, or it just comes upon us and then we've got a different set of problems. So yeah, I get it. Labor and New Zealand First don't really have political will for it. I think they've been quite dishonest in terms of not facing up to the challenge that we've got, and I think just chucking it down the road to the kids and grandkids isn't the right way. So I get it's not politically popular, but actually we should have a bigger conversation and a debate about it.
Okay, Gold Visa, once again, it's getting a lot of attention. So yes, there's money coming in. Last week's story appeared to be there's a lot of people who've been given the clearance to be the recipient of the money from these people who've got the $5 or $10 million. But you guys are running champagne evenings and canapes and all that sort of stuff. And you're going, here's where you can go. And you're running out the same programs every time. The criticism increasingly is, well, what about my program that is being cleared but isn't getting the sort of headline material that you're running out? Are you limiting the money to certain good old-fashioned things you'd like to see the money parked in? Yeah. And could you be doing a better job?
I think we're actually becoming victims of our own success, if I'm honest about it. We've raised almost $4 billion in just over 12 months from about 580 individuals. It is really powerful. It is working very well. Like I was down in Christchurch, this professor and this PhD student have started a company called Zethos. They're recycling critical minerals and particularly turning things into, in this case, zinc. 2 investors, I think one from Brazil, the other from the Netherlands, came through the program and actually put money into the startup. So it's really helping the startup community big time, which means they can either invest in capital to scale up the business or find a new market or do stuff like that. But I think we're going to have to look at maybe broadening out the asset classes, because there's actually so much money coming into some of those sectors of types of assets like startup investments and funds that we probably need to think about that a bit more as well.
Okay. Did you follow Farah and the UK over the weekend at all or not?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Do you think, because we haven't seen it here to the same extent, do you think that's just a lot of grumpy people who wanted to send a message in a by-election or a council election, or the world is changing and that change may well come here?
Look, I think there are some big shifts. You've gone through a pandemic that people are pretty frustrated about. They're dealing with inflation, which they haven't seen for 30-something years, and they've also got technological disruption coming. And then you've got the rise of social media as well, in the sense of Trevor might go down to the pub and have a whinge to his mates at the pub, but now Trevor gets on board with his keyboard and finds 10,000 people that have a similar sort of view. So there are some fundamental shifts in global politics, and whether I talk to leaders in other countries, they're all wrestling with the same grumpy kind of population dynamics. I think in both those cases, there's also a very strong illegal, unsupported immigration policies, and that has been very aggravating, understandably so, to people. Here in New Zealand, that has not been our experience. We have actually tightened our settings in the last 2 years. We've moved from 70% low skilled to 70% high skilled. We've gone from 130,000 net migration to 25,000 net migration. So, I appreciate there are some that want to play politics with immigration, but it's just a very different story here. And I think that's because we've made it linked to infrastructure and economic growth.
All right. Where'd you get your $6 million from?
Party donations.
Yeah.
Look,
no, not your, unless you want to tell us where you got your own $6 million from.
No.
I'm sorted. I get it.
Yeah. Don't go there.
So where'd you get the $6 million?
You're such a tall poppy knocker.
Sorry. Where'd you get your $6 million
Look,
from?
it's actually really encouraging. There's a lot of people out there who actually support our values of our party, and a lot of people are going to say, it's just wealthy donors, as it was in 2023. It's actually a lot of small donations when you look at the numbers.
Because they're good numbers compared to the
there's
others.
A lot of support out there for what we're doing, actually, despite some of the media narrative at times.
Freddie's changed his mind.
Has he?
Freddie wants
to be Prime Minister?
He may well want to be Prime Minister. Does he want to ask it on air or just through me? All right, what's your favourite subject at school is his question.
My favourite subject, Freddie, was history, because I actually think, and I loved it. And my first book I got into was at the Cockle Bay Primary School. I would go down to the library and I read about this guy called Winston Churchill, and I got the Usborne Guide to World War II, and I studied all the missiles on different sides, and I just loved military history and history in general. So that was
Fantastic.
my favourite thing.
There you go. Nice to see you. Yeah, what are you announcing? Anything exciting this afternoon?
You know, in this government we are very, very busy, Mike, and we're announcing something different every single day, just to take this country forward, to realise its great potential.
There we go. Nice to see you. Prime Minister Christopher Luxon, 13-2.